Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Wednesday. It's July the 30th, another hot day here in South Louisiana. Welcome to Let's Talk Tropics as we go over what's happening out in the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean as well, and we'll take a little peek sometimes at the Pacific. Pacific's been pretty active here over the last several days, but it looks like the Atlantic is going to start to wake up here over the coming weeks, right on time pretty much as we start to roll into the month of August when things get pretty busy. And that's when we have the bulk of our hurricanes and tropical storms. So about the next 8 weeks are going to be the busy time. So hopefully you're prepared for hurricane season. You've had a couple of months already to be able to get ready for it. So hopefully you got what you need if you need to stay home if a tropical system comes your way or if you are evacuating. But right now, nothing going on locally. We're in good shape. Temperature 91 over at Lafayette Regional, 105 though on that heat index, dew point at 77, and the humidity at 63%. Got a bit of a breeze out of the north-northwest at 7, and the pressure 30.01. And there are some showers and thunderstorms mainly out in the offshore waters here this afternoon, and that's part of a trough that's kind of centered right here over southern Alabama, and that's going to be moving off toward the west over the next day or so. So we might get another round of some showers and thunderstorms kind of developing out in this particular area, and then kind of moving off toward the southwest a little bit later on this afternoon and this evening. So kind of be on the lookout for that as we're going to be seeing the hot and humid weather locally. But the showers and thunderstorms might be coming in a little bit later than what we are normally accustomed to, like that 2 o'clock shower that we usually have. This is probably going to be late in the afternoon and into the early evening hours. You can see that that rain kind of extends over coastal Alabama, all part of that trough that's going to continue to move off toward the west. Pretty day, though. It's hot, doesn't feel so great, but it looks pretty nice out there with a mix of sun and clouds. And for anybody who wants to do any boating, especially in the western waters of Louisiana, you'll probably be okay. Eastern waters, though, with those scattered showers and thunderstorms, it'll produce some higher winds and seas. But as a general rule, we're looking at west-northwest winds about 5 to 10 knots and seas running about 1 to 2 feet. So looking at the big picture, again, we've got a bit of a trough of low pressure that's kind of drifting its way off toward the west here along the Gulf Coast. Got a big ridge of high pressure that's here over the mid-Atlantic states and into the Appalachians. Got a front that's going to be moving pretty far to the south as we go into the weekend. Doesn't look like it's going to bring us any relief from summer, but it is going to pool some moisture here along the Gulf Coast, and that should get some showers and thunderstorms going. If the front gets all the way down into the Gulf or perhaps the eastern Atlantic, I'd be on the lookout for a low pressure area to develop along that. At this point, some of the models are kind of showing that down the road, but nothing doesn't seem to be really significant here along the Gulf Coast nor along the East Coast, but we'll watch that front as it sags toward the south. It's going to keep our rain chances a bit higher over the course of the weekend. Real quick tour of some of the beach cams we've got here. Panama City, gorgeous day there as they're on the backside of the trough now, so they're enjoying some fine weather there. But as you move off toward the west, got those showers and thunderstorms there looking westward there from Orange Beach, and you can see the rain just in the offshore waters of Dauphin Island and even over toward Cocodrie. Kind of cloudy out there with the thunderstorms out in the offshore waters, and the clouds are starting to work their way farther to the west, and I expect areas of southeast Texas to be mostly cloudy with a better chance for thunderstorms tonight and going into tomorrow. So there's a look at our Gulf satellite. Really the only feature we've got out there is that trough, and it's going to harmlessly kind of roll its way off toward the west here over the next 24 and 36 hours. And at the same time, it's going to kind of pull inland, and we're going to see a front kind of coming in from the northwest. So that moisture is going to kind of get trapped here along the Gulf Coast. Doesn't mean it's going to be a washout for the next several days, but it is going to bring elevated rain chances. But as you can see, the rest of the Gulf waters looking pretty nice. A fine day there over Florida, much of Cuba. You see a little bit of a wave kind of moving there westward along the northern Cuban coast, and that's a tropical wave that's approaching Central America. You've got one tropical wave that's now moved over into the Pacific basin here, and we've got another tropical wave right about there, and another one that's coming here across the central part of the Caribbean. At this point in time, it doesn't look like we're going to see anything developing there. We've got another tropical wave that's kind of working past Puerto Rico, and yet more that's starting to stir out in the middle part of the Atlantic. But one of the areas that we're we're kind of keeping a little bit more close eye on, mainly because of how it looks out here over the central part of the Atlantic, and also how it looks on some of the computer models. I think this might be a candidate for some development here over the next couple of days. It rolled off the African coast about 2.5 days ago, and it's maintained some organization there, and there are indications on some of the global models that this might have a chance of becoming a tropical depression or tropical storm here maybe in the next 2 or 3 days as it drifts its way off toward the west, toward the Windward and Leeward Islands, and then the remnants of this may be working north of the Caribbean islands and over toward the Bahamas. We kind of talked about this in the models yesterday, but it's beyond the 10-day period. So again, very, very iffy when it comes to what is out there right now, what it's going to become, and where it's going to go. But as far as the tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center, they've still got zip on there for the next 7 days, while the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook looks at week 2 and week 3. So maybe going into that first full week of August there, or August 6th through the 12th, the second full week of August rather, we'll probably see maybe some action there over the Bahamas, East Coast, maybe eastern part of the Gulf. Again, that might be an indication of those tropical waves that are working off the African coast and may turn toward the northwest. But there's also a frontal boundary that's going to be pushing and kind of stalling in that area, but that looks like it's going to be a little bit too late for that. Week 3 keeps things a little more active there over the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean, which really kind of rolls in line here with our Euro forecast. Now, this is basically looking at the chances that any kind of tropical system, whether it's a tropical depression, a tropical storm, or a hurricane, would pass within a certain distance of these points. And over the Atlantic, right where that tropical wave is, that's where we're seeing the highest chance we could see some development, at least according to the Euro, better than 50%, maybe 60 to 70%. And then at the same time, we're going to have several fronts that are going to work off the East Coast. So occasionally when that front gets out there, you can get a low to develop, and usually those will go ahead and cruise out into the Atlantic and really won't be an issue. So this area here and this area here are probably going to be your prime suspects, at least for the next couple of days. And not just this out here in the middle part of the Atlantic, but I'd kind of watch this area, this track of an area over the next several days as that wave kind of moves off toward the west-northwest. Going a little bit farther out, following along with the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook, you see that that formation forecast stays a bit high off the East Coast going through the 11th of August, that's Monday of next week through Monday of the following week. So we're jumping quite a ways ahead here. But still, even in the Atlantic Ocean, there's a good 30 to 40% chance that we could see some kind of tropical system pass in those particular areas. Also, that is really about where everything develops during the month of August, so it's really not surprising to see these Euro models indicating the week 1, week 2, that we could see increased activity, because as you see on this map, normally about 70% or more than 70 tropical systems have made their way through that area over the western Atlantic near the northern Leeward Islands, and about 50 to 70 storms have moved along the east coast as well, and that's over the past 100 years. So those are the more primary spots that we would see development anyway during the month of August. Now, the bigger concern, though, is not necessarily the East Coast or over in the Atlantic as we go through time. The Gulf, as well as the Western Caribbean, even though there are no tropical systems or waves coming in this area right now, it's still priming itself for the possibility of tropical weather to come through. And the Gulf waters are starting to push into the upper 80s to even over 90 degrees in some cases here along the Louisiana coast. Also Alabama, Florida, and getting down to the Florida Keys, we've got some very warm temperatures. And then at the same time, western portions of the Caribbean, that Yucatan Channel and areas south of Cuba, even though there's land there, it doesn't really give us a safe haven for any tropical systems coming in from the Caribbean. And with those waters like that, and at the same time, you've got the tropical cyclone heat potential sky high there in those regions. If we do get tropical systems tracking or forecast to track across these areas, you could have a significant tropical storm or even a significant hurricane, especially if it rolls through that high area of heat potential, which is basically the measurement of how deep that 80-degree water goes. And in some cases in the western part of the Caribbean, that 80-degree therm might be 100 to 150 meters below the surface of the ocean. So if a tropical system comes across, it starts to tumble the water around, get those big waves, and it can sometimes churn up some of the colder waters that are below the surface. But when you have a tremendous amount of hot water that goes really, really deep under the surface, it can really work in a tropical system's favor, kind of like acting like jet fuel, just to really get it going. And you occasionally will see a rapid development over these areas if we were to have a tropical system come through. Right now, good news is we don't have anything out there, and we don't have anything forecast to move in this particular area. But as we go into the middle part of August and especially into September, the chances of a tropical system moving over these areas will increase. Now, we do have a little friend in the atmosphere, though, and that's the wind shear. So tropical systems that are trying to develop really like calm conditions from the surface of the ocean and going high and higher and higher in the atmosphere. But when you've got winds at different speeds, at different directions, as a tropical system is just trying to form, wind shear can kind of push on the core of these systems, either opening them up completely or maybe tilting the core. And when you don't have a good vertical stack in the center of a tropical system, you're not going to have something that's able to develop any stronger or really will struggle to become a strong system. So what the atmosphere needs to do in order to sustain some of these big hurricanes is you have to have a lot of low vertical wind shear in that area. Right now, there's plenty of it along the Louisiana Gulf Coast and much of the northern Gulf Coast, and there's plenty of wind shear out over the Atlantic, including those areas that are off the African coast, which is a little bit surprising, but we are going to see the wind shear eventually starting to subside as we go through the month of August and especially into September, because usually you have a lot of wind shear early in the hurricane season, and then that Saharan dust, which we're going to talk about here, as well as the wind shear, does start to subside as you get into the peak of the hurricane months. But right now there is a lot of Saharan dust over the Caribbean, some of that pushing westward into the Bahamas and South Florida, but it is going to maybe kind of roll in tandem with that tropical wave that's over the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean. So we'll have to see how much of an effect the Saharan dust has on that particular tropical wave. So real quick run through the different computer models. This is the GFS taking us for the next 10 days. And you can see that there's a little low there off the East Coast farther down the road, but I'm going to let this go ahead and restart here and then kind of track it along. You see that low, there's that little tropical wave, and then it gets to about right there, and then right about there by August 4th, and then kind of gets into this area, and you don't really see a whole lot come out of it as you get into August 6th, 7th, and 8th, so going out that 10 days. But for a while, you see a little bit of a track of a low-pressure area kind of drifting from here and then working its way off toward the northwest. You might also notice as this goes ahead and resets that there's a number of fronts coming off the East Coast, and then you get a series of lows that can make their way eastward across the Atlantic. So whether those would be tropical systems or not is yet to be seen. Euro model's been a little bit more robust on some development out in the Atlantic, at least in the early frames, but again, we're going to kind of follow that little wave as it moves off toward the west-northwest through time. This is taking us through next Sunday, and then, or rather Sunday, and then going into early next week. Again, the Euro doesn't pick up on a whole lot, but there is another one, and we're going to talk about that coming up in just a little bit. But remember, you got that low, and then it kind of runs in this direction. We're just kind of following the moisture here, and a little bit of a trough right about there. So as we get into the early part of next week, the moisture starts to pool here over the Atlantic, and at least on this particular scenario, it looks like that front might pick something up and pull it back out to sea, and we won't have to worry about anything in the next 10 days. But I am going to show you the Euro model going out just a little bit farther, just to show you there are other areas that we're going to need to watch in the coming weeks. Canadian model shows a little low ripple there over the middle part of the Atlantic for a short period of time, and maybe a pool of moisture making its way off toward the Bahamas. But as far as the Canadian model, really not seeing a whole lot there, except for maybe a low zipping off a front off the mid-Atlantic states, and a couple of tropical waves maybe down the road. becoming low pressure, but the Canadian model really is not showing anything significant here. And then finally on the Icon model, which kind of backed off a little bit from yesterday, that tropical wave works its way north of the Leeward and Windward Islands, and then it gets into Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic. But look at the front over the southeast, pulling far enough to the south that maybe that would go ahead and block any tropical weather. And hopefully that trough in the upper levels over the eastern half of the country digs a little farther to the south, because that can turn tropical systems away from the lower 48. Real quick, I wanted to go just a little bit farther out with the Euro, and I'm using the Euro model from earlier this morning. It actually ran last night, but it processed very, very early this morning. But the 0Z Euro model goes out farther than the 6Z. The 6Z only goes out in 144 hours, so this goes out 300 or so. So we're right now starting at the end of the 10-day period that I showed you earlier. And what I wanted to point out is this area right there. Just kind of focus on that particular region, and we're going to go advance this just a little bit farther through time. So that is on August the 9th. So that's a week from this coming Saturday. And then you see there's a little bit of something kind of sustaining itself and moving off toward the west-northwest. So farther down the road, there might be something. We got one wave that's in the middle part of the Atlantic that will probably bring some moisture in that direction, but most models are kind of inconclusive that anything's going to develop. But even farther down the road, there might be yet another wave coming across the Atlantic that might have a chance for some development and moving off into portions of the Bahamas or maybe the southeastern U.S. But again, that's just one model, and it's taking it out a little bit far there. We're going out, 324 hours, I think is what I've got up there. So that's a long, long way out. So there's always going to be a lot of changes. But it does kind of fall in line that the fact that hurricane season peaks out in the early part of September, about September the 10th or so. And the number of tropical systems and hurricanes really starts to shoot up once we turn that page into August, and by halfway through August, you're really starting to ramp your way up there. So we all know the drill. We all know how August and September goes. Everybody's kind of on edge. Every little tropical wave, social media kind of lights up as well. But we're going to roll through this for the next several weeks, and hopefully we will keep everything away from the Acadiana region. Well, I hope you enjoyed Let's Talk Tropics. If you do like this video, subscribe to my channel and turn on those notifications. And also, please listen to these great Acadiana independently owned radio stations: Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And also remember to follow my social media pages on Facebook and X. And thanks to everyone who subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you on Thursday morning for Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube.